Here we go again. Clone Wars fans versus Rebels fans. You're lucky if you're both, because the rest of us have expectations for this show which are at odds. Like Clone Wars fans get just a few more precious seconds of Anakin, and you guys go gaga for the episode. But hey, I mean, you should get excited. Ahsoka has a whole box of Anakin, a very nice mahogany box. I thought that was cute. And I thought it was cute that it was in this nice little, like, old school box in her closet, and she was like, letters from Anakin. And a lot of you like Ahsoka too. I mean, I gotta tell you, to be honest with you, maybe that's part of my problem with this show sometimes. I'm not a big Ahsoka fan. I don't think I've seen some of her more important arcs in Clone Wars. I've seen a few episodes. And she's nice. I don't dislike Ahsoka, but she never made a really strong impression on me. I don't get why she's a fan favorite, to be honest with you. And while I loved Rosario Dawson's debut as the character in Mandalorian, I mean, since then, the slowness of her fighting skills and her detachment emotionally, even though that she's Ahsoka the White now, I'm just not feeling it. And then, for us Rebels fans, Ezra Bridger, our worst fears came true, and just as I predicted, he refused to pick up that lightsaber. Some compared it to how Disney did Luke Skywalker dirty in The Last Jedi. And that is interesting, I have to say. That is weird that they did that to both. You know, that they have so few, particularly male Jedi left, that are ready to hit the ground running, and then they de-lightsaber them. It's very bizarre. And I was super annoyed. I'm a huge Ezra Bridger fan. Seeing him return was probably my main reason for being excited about this show. And I have to say, so I was very annoyed with this episode because, one, with a lightsaber, Ezra Bridger could have taken out both platoons single-handedly. He's that good. So it's weird to see him just say, you know what? I think that in this life or death fight, which ended up not being a life or death fight, we'll talk about that. But he's like, I'm going to tie one hand behind my back, heck, both hands behind my back. And you're like, why would you do that? I have your lightsaber right here. She doesn't even want to use it. We'll talk about that too. And then also, I've been building up Ezra Bridger for weeks now. I'm like, wait till you see this guy in action. And quite frankly, he ended up embarrassing me, and I'm not happy about it. All right, so I will say that looks and personality-wise, Eman Esfandi continues to simply be Ezra Bridger. Some of the best Star Wars casting that's ever been done. I mean, I truly believe that's the character. As I said last week, I think it helps that his character aged up so much. I think that helps make the jump from animation to live action. But in his look and the way he carries himself and his attitude, he is Ezra. So that's, kudos to the casting director, but of course also kudos to Eman Esfandi, who really did a great job picking up where the animated series left off. I also kind of like Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine Wren. Her purple pixie cut does a lot of the work for her, quite frankly. Especially when it's like in the wind, I'm like, that's a great haircut. Although the internet seems to have mixed feelings about her. She's okay. I agree, she was a little annoying at the beginning, but I've come to really like her. Only Hera for me has been a misfire. I mean, she certainly has her moments, but I just don't think she's working out. Not just in casting and the way they've brought her character to life. She looks like she's in a costume. I don't believe that's, I'm like, it's Mary Elizabeth Mastrano. And, she and Ewan McGregor are now a Star Wars family. And then also, I think her storyline sucks. I said it. We're going to talk about that too. So I got lots of good things to say too, but also some observations where I'm having a little fun, and I think they're correct. All right, so anyway, last night I tweeted that this episode played like filler to me, which annoyed some Filoniverse fans who take everything extremely personally. They're like, how dare you, glove slap. And it's like, oh, I dare. Because the thing is, we're in the exact same spot that we were at the end of last week's episode, waiting for Thrawn to jump back to the main galaxy and wondering who's going to be able to hop a ride back and who will potentially get left behind. Perhaps even Thrawn himself. Some of you responded and said he loaded up his cargo, Grace. Well, I didn't even get to learn for sure what that cargo was. If I had learned a little bit more about the cargo, I would have felt better about this episode, quite frankly. And by the way, speaking of going home, I sure hope Ezra hasn't jinxed himself. I'm like, stop saying how excited you are to go home, because every time you say it, I feel you're not going to go home. Now, sure, as some of you also pointed out, the characters have been rearranged a little bit. You're like, they're all together now, Grace. Whatever. Yeah, Ahsoka and Ezra were reunited, but they never seemed that close to me during Rebels. At least, I didn't watch every single Rebels episode, but I don't think I missed the episode where Ezra and Ahsoka became best friends. He did literally save her life in the World Between Worlds, which I did see, and I was surprised that wasn't even brought up. Like, now we're even. Or, it's good for me to, well, she didn't do anything to save him. And I say, and that's a good point. Ahsoka's all smiles now, ruffling his hair, being like, oh, you're the best. Oh, no, speaking of hair, I forgot to put that in my notes. Fantastic moment when Shin Hati clipped Ezra's hair and he caught the hair and the strand of hair, and he was like, that was pretty close. Oh, that was great. That's some Ezra goodness right there. And I'm supposed to have so much more of it. I'm annoyed. All right, so Ahsoka's like, you rascal, I'm so glad to see you. And I saw someone tweet online, they were like, she's so happy she giggled. You know what? Just about an episode or two ago, she was telling Sabine they might have to leave Ezra abandoned in this other galaxy forever because they had to make sure no matter what that Thrawn didn't return. So I'm just saying. I think she's a little bit Vadery after all. I know she's all worried about having some Vader in her, and I'm like, it's already there. All right, so it's the truth. All right. Now, why will anyone tell Ezra what's going on? He's like, what's really going on? He's like, so when are we going home? How'd you get here? And they're like, and I'm like, ticking clock, ladies. We don't have time to play coy. And also on Ezra, it's Ezra's fault too, because of all the questions that he's asking. Why isn't he asking any about Thrawn? You would think these two would have been duking it out for this, some people say they've been there a decade. Why haven't they been pew-pewing at each other for 10 years, right? Not only do you think because they hate each other, they won't be like, I guess this planet is big enough for the two of us. You take the side of the witches, Thrawn, and I'll take the side of the snails. And I'm like, Ezra, can't you negotiate a deal? We'll talk about the witches and Ezra in a moment. But you would think that Ezra would just want to keep an eye on Thrawn because he knows Thrawn is very tricky and resourceful. And perhaps Thrawn would figure a way to get back by himself. And he kind of did. He's the one who called to Morgan Elspeth, we found out, last episode. And that's why she's here. He said, Morgan, come get me. He called for an Uber. And so you think that Ezra would be like, I bet Thrawn figures something out. I have to either be able to stop him or get on myself. I would think that Ezra would have known that they'd showed up. You think, because as I said, you think he'd be keeping tabs on what Thrawn was up to. Instead, he's like, what are you doing here? Craziness. I'd be like, send some snails for reconnaissance, for Pete's sakes. They're really good at hiding. Didn't we establish that? They're no Ewoks. Those guys knew how to get stuff done. Now, the new pacifist Ezra is not what I signed up for. And you know what? It's not the character either. And for those of you who didn't watch Rebels, you don't know any of this. You don't care. It's not annoying you, but it's really annoying me. His parents were rebels, and who died. They were killed for being rebels. And he's been a rebel to some degree his entire life. Teaching the snail people how to use his slingshot does not count. Also, speaking of the witches, wouldn't they want to hunt him down since they hate Jedi so much? He's a very skilled Jedi, and they're with an extreme connection to the Force, one of the best I've ever seen. And I think, and also they make it seem like, because some of you are like, well, I've read every single Star Wars piece of entertainment ever put out since it debuted in the 70s. But from the way Ezra's been presented by Star Wars itself, he is like a top-notch Jedi. So therefore, I would assume from the witch's perspective, an extremely dangerous enemy and or valuable asset. Why is he just allowed to run around with snails in their backyard? So we saw Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka all together. 3 Jedi, or is that really 2.5 Jedi? And I think that's incredibly kind as is to Sabine. I wouldn't even call her half a Jedi. She's a crumb of a Jedi. She's not a Jedi at all, in my opinion. Now, someone also, when I said nothing happened this week, said, excuse me, we got proof that Sabine is Force sensitive. And I'm like, really? I think their connection is more about Ahsoka and what Ahsoka can do and how Ahsoka feels about Sabine. Because Ahsoka could see Sabine, but Sabine couldn't see Ahsoka. She just got a vague idea, and then she really had no idea what was going on there. You know, I think if that had been Ezra and Kanan, they could have had a whole conversation, right? And while Ezra insisted that Sabine use his lightsaber, she uses it, you'll notice, just like any other weapon in her arsenal. Just like, I thought, it reminded me a little bit of Mando when he had the Darksaber, which was cool. And, remember, during Rebels, Sabine had the Darksaber. She was actually the first to wield it when it was uncovered. But anyway, Ezra was an artist with the lightsaber. Lusai, you guys are missing out. I'm so sad, and I'm worried that we're never going to get it because now he's a pacifist. And I'm like, can you just not do that level of action in live, lightsaber fighting in live action? They were doing the force pushing. Someone called it force foo, and you said you thought it was very impressive. But I didn't think it was impressive at all. He could, if he was doing more, if he was doing basically like airbending, where he's flying all around, doing big leaps and like doing multiple people at once, then maybe I would have been a little more impressed. But he seems to have the same force abilities as Shin Hati, who was throwing people around. So, Ezra's supposed to be very much further advanced. And since all he's had is the Force for the last 10 years, you'd think he would have picked up a lot of cool tricks. He didn't have his lightsaber, so he's like, look what I can do. But so I was just extremely underwhelmed. Now, as Thrawn watches the action unfold from the comfort of his control room, he's whelmed. And he does have to marvel at the effectiveness of just a few Jedi, remarking that it seems like the old days, right, before Order 66, where you could send one Jedi with a bunch of clone troopers and they took care of business. But you know what I also think is important to note? That his potentially undead stormtroopers are also like the old days. Totally incompetent. Now, some of you might be like, the clones were very effective, Grace. They were very effective soldiers. But anytime a hero in Star Wars at any point goes up against stormtroopers, it always goes in the hero's direction. The stormtroopers are just complete idiots. Because, how can you have two platoons level their guns at Sabine and Ezra and they don't get taken out? Sure, Ezra yelled stop, but why would the stormtroopers listen to him? I don't think that's how executions go. Also, I didn't like Ezra acting as if they were all just playing a game. He became Peter Pan. He was like, good job, Captain Hook and Smee. Here we go. I'm going to be captured now. He knows the high stakes. Again, his own parents were killed for being rebels. Kanan sacrificed his life before Ezra's very eyes to save Ezra and Hera. And so Ezra's making jokes here? How is he more childish as an adult? I blame the snails. I blame those snails. Very poor influence. Speaking of Thrawn, master tactician my butt, I would say he is more a Star Wars Bond villain because he spent an awful lot of time this episode, more than once, monologuing like crazy about how his letting the heroes live yet again actually was part of his evil plan. He's like, oh, mustache twirl, I'm costing them time. I'm like, this is so stupid. You're giving them opportunity. Thrawn himself, also this episode says, upon learning the identity of Ahsoka's former master, Anakin, that Anakin was a formidable opponent and a wild card. So why take the chance of leaving her alive and her cohorts to deliver a classic Anakin last-minute surprise? I'd be like, they're right there. Let's just take care of this now. It's ridiculous. They're turning Morgan into, what was her name? Frau something, right? Remember from Austin Powers? It's just crazy. I'm like, Thrawn, it is totally out of the James Bond playbook. Balin Skoll learned this lesson the hard way. He didn't check to see if Ahsoka was dead, and there she is. Although I'm starting to think he has no intention of leaving this new galaxy, or very, very old galaxy, actually. As he doesn't seem to be in a rush at all. Like when Ahsoka took his dog wolf, right? He was like, whatever, man. He didn't seem at all concerned that would hinder whatever his plans are. So I'm thinking maybe his plans are to stay, or he's going to make everyone stay. I'm not sure, but he's giving off real Captain of the Titanic vibes. I guess we'll find out next week what his plan is. Hopefully, fingers crossed. How many times has Disney Plus not delivered? A lot. Because next week is the final episode, and quite frankly, unless it's an hour and a half, Once again, Disney has not given themselves enough time, speaking of time, to wrap things up in a satisfying way. Instead, creating, once again, a very long, get excited, coming attractions preview of another show or movie that is supposedly in the future. Because sometimes they don't even deliver on what they're getting us excited about. Like, Wanda, right? I'm kind of annoyed. So I did love the tech of how Enoch, is he a captain? But whatever, how Enoch appeared and disappeared. Very different from the standard Star Wars hologram communications. I was like, ooh, sparkly Enoch. Enoch's got a lot of bling. I was like, partially tech, but also it seemed like magic. And it has to be, magic has to be the cool factor. Because Thrawn wouldn't have any new tech on his much older Star Destroyer from a decade ago that he and Ezra brought with them. So I don't know if this is like the magic, having a factor in there, but it's very cool. I like it quite a bit. Speaking of the past, I did realize that at this point, Anakin hasn't just turned into Darth Vader, but he did. Ooh, which is indeed quite sad. But it's good that Ahsoka the White hasn't totally abandoned Anakin. She's instead seems to be comfortable embracing him again, using the old lessons that he recorded for her, although that was the last one. She said that like 20? That's not too many, but it means future Hayden Christensen cameos. Thank you very much. I know a lot of Clone Wars fans geeked out with Hayden Christensen just mentioning some of your favorite baddies, but personally, again, I'm tired of empty promises. Wake me up when Asajj Ventress actually shows up in live action. And that would be super cool. I would be very much in favor of that. She is a fantastic character. And I watched some Clone Wars episodes with her, and she was great. And I do think that Hayden Christensen continues to do a great job, but I wish he was being used in a more meaningful way. With him being actually dead, I kind of like the idea of his Force ghost perhaps being in torment, right? Torn between the dark and the light, still part Vader. That's why he blips back and forth, as we saw in Episode 5. But at the end of Return of the Jedi, wasn't he supposed to have found peace in the end, which is what allowed him to become a Force ghost, to go back to the good side? I think this underlines that the Anakin we saw in Episode 5 is more of a construct of Ahsoka's mind than his actual Force ghost. And that's also kind of interesting, because Ahsoka isn't seeing ever the real Anakin, only how she knew him and what her assumptions about him were. Oh, what if she talked to the real Anakin? He's like, boy, the way you remember me is not flattering, Ahsoka. Although he has a lot of the blame is he has to take credit for. All right, so another blast from the past is, of course, C-3PO. Now, I got to tell you, I don't like C-3PO. So that kind of did not make me that excited about seeing him. I a little bit was like, oh no, not this guy. And I thought his return was a bit too cartoonish, like very Saturday morning cartoon, like yikes. But old school Star Wars fans seem delighted, so that's nice. I'm happy for you. Although I, as a Chopper fan, liked it when he got upset with the droid diss from that senator, who is clearly an Empire sympathizer. How is he allowed to maintain his position? Why is he not at least being investigated? Why doesn't Mon Mothma wink at Hera and be like, we got a whole secret platoon up his I'm trying to be PG-13 here, but I'd be like, don't worry, I'm on this guy. But instead, Mon Mothma completes the picture of today's own political spectrum, where the opposite side is completely ineffectual and naive. So it's really annoying to me. It's like almost like those Senate meetings are like just a farce. Now, why is it so hard, speaking of this group, for them to believe that Thrawn could return after Morgan Elspeth just jumped to another long-lost galaxy with stolen hyperdrives? Isn't there data? I mean, Huyang is always talking about data. He's like, I got all this data from what just happened around us. So why don't those ships that the New Republic sent back in Episode 4 to try and get Hera, right, or back up to also, we're either going to back you up or we're going to arrest you. But why did those ships, they were there, certainly right around the time that the jump happened. Don't they have any data to report? Why does everything have to be taken at Hera's word? And doesn't she have a body cam or dashboard cam on her ship? I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me. The senator's like, it seems like fantasy to me. Are Purgle really not at all documented? They seem to be they were in Rebels a lot. People were running into them. But is there no documentation? I mean, this is a modern society, in contrast to the old galaxy we've just returned to. No one took a photo? How about today? Everybody has a cell phone. All right. And then C-3PO name drops Princess Leia. And I gotta tell you, it went so bad with the original, main 3 characters in the Disney trilogy. I just kind of would rather just, move on from them at this point. But I know some of you are still very, very, very affectionate towards them. So I wonder, how did you feel? To me, this was like, come on, man, are we ever going to move on? But instead, Princess Leia, a senator, right, now a senator herself, and leader of the Defense Council, right, she's able to help Hera. But this begs the question, an unfortunate question, and that's unfortunate for the story. And that's that if Leia is head of the Defense Council, how has she not already been looped into a conversation about the potential return of Thrawn? You'd think she'd be all over that. Why are we even wasting our time with this stupid, incompetent baby council? And then also, is Leia just never going to show up? Is she always going to have to make an appearance from off camera and have someone else speak for her? If Star Wars is going to stop digitally bringing back characters after the actors who played them passed away, perfectly understandable, and also not recast them like they recast Mon Mothma. That worked out. Maybe they should consider recasting Princess Leia. Although the legacy and how Star Wars treated Carrie Fisher, and they benched her for so long, she passed away before they were able to truly do something with her again. I think it's better just to move on. You just can't continue to loop them into the story as it moves forward because they're not available. I mean, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And I know Star Wars fans have different opinions about this, so I'd be curious to hear yours. And then considering that almost everyone seems to agree, almost everyone, except people who want him to come back, other senator, but everybody can agree that if Thrawn were to return, that would be very, very bad. So why not prepare for it? I mean, in real life, countries prepare for things that are very slim, to none that they might actually happen, but they're prepared. Thrawn, by the way, did a nice job of preparing for those space whales, the Purrgil. When they dropped out of their hyperjump into that sea of landmines, I was like, damn, that's a lot of landmines. Although I was surprised that after so many years, Thrawn did have that many resources left. I was like, he's a landmine hoarder at the very least. They were so perfectly put out. I was impressed. I thought that was pretty cool. They seem to do little damage to the whales, though. I guess because this is a Disney Plus show. I thought we were going to see some blown-up whale carcasses, and Ahsoka would be like, I did that. But instead, everybody was fine. All right, they just jumped out of there, by the way. So I'm like, if they can't, that's a good point. If the Purrgil can leave, why isn't there a return ticket already? Wasn't this their graveyard? I mean, did they just rob those Purrgil of a dignified death? All right. Thrawn also doesn't seem to have that much cargo. He's like, it's going to take a long time to load it on. And I was like, seems to me not that much. Why are you guys so slow? But anyway, those are definitely coffins or some type of body container, right? I hope we just find out what's in there next week. And as I said, if I had found out this week what was in there or gotten at least a few more clues or a closer look or like there's a little smoke coming out of one, I would have felt better about this week's episode. But clearly they felt that this week was all about action. It's an action episode. But was it? I mean, I appreciated the amount of action. I appreciated the attempt. But I still thought a lot of it was very poorly choreographed. And once again, Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka just moves too slowly. Also, when she was fighting Balin, I was like, shouldn't he have 2 lightsabers? It seems to benefit her considerably. She's always like, he blocks her one lightsaber and she's like, ha ha! And I'm like, maybe you should have 2. But it doesn't matter because when she can't defeat Balin. And when she went to take him on again, I was like, I gotta tell you, after having seen her on this show this season, I was like, I don't think you can take that dude. And she couldn't. She couldn't do it, even though she made short work of Merrick. And how do you drop that storyline, by the way? Or maybe we haven't, because again, we don't know what's in those coffins, those gold coffins. Is it a whole bunch of Merricks? I think that's what we're all thinking. So Ahsoka couldn't defeat Balin, and by the way, Balin wasn't even singed by all that stuff that Huyang dropped in the drive-by. I'm like, he's not even, his uniform's not even singed. He was perfectly fine. And then I guess it's a valuable lesson here that they showed that there are multiple ways you can win a fight, and it doesn't always have to be taking on your opponent directly. But at the same time, Ahsoka is supposed to be like this amazing Jedi. I think that her fights with Balin would be a little bit more balanced than they seem to be. Balin is an amazing Jedi. I mean, I don't know if it's just because he's fighting Ahsoka or what, but he certainly has the swagger of a super awesome Jedi. I mean, again, Ray Stevenson, rest in peace. Incredible work on this show. And I liked his final lesson to Shin Hati. Impatience for victory will surely lead to defeat. And it went right over her head. She was like, okay, master, now I gotta go win. He was like, whatever, I'm never gonna see her again. Again, I told you, he seems to not care about anything anymore. But at least she's smart enough to realize there's just one bus headed back to the original galaxy, and she best be on it. Will anyone else join her? Will it be all aboard next week, or are peeps getting left behind? What do you think? Will Ezra ever return to his former glory? I'm going to be so upset if he does not. Could Shin Hati become a good guy? That was presented as an option this week, but does she even have time to? And on that note, do you think we could possibly get all the answers we need in next week's season finale? Because it's probably under an hour. All right, share your thoughts down below, although it is directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who just completely has done a fantastic job every time he's done a Mandalorian episode. So I am a little excited still. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.